It really is peak literature to have something that I thought was an original experience, only to have Emily Henry prove to me that I have in fact never had an original experience in my entire life. Hi, welcome back to my channel, and Happy New Year, I think. Hopefully, I don't know. I really want it to be still 2024 in some part of this world by the time I upload this video, but we'll see if that really happens. As you can probably guess by the title of this video, today I am wrapping up the year by talking about the most popular published books of 2024. This is something that you guys chose for me to do, and if you're new here, welcome. I make book-related videos every now and then, but I mainly make videos related to shows and movies and pop culture, especially rankings. But I'm always open to suggestions and focusing on content that people want, so if you like any of those things, you should subscribe or you'll get bad luck in 2025. So I got my top 3 books published in 2024 from a Goodreads list. I know, shocking, this list was determined by the shelvings on Goodreads, but I also cross-checked that with a number of ratings. So we've got Funny Story by Emily Henry, then The Women by Kristin, and third is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And I think I'm going to start from the third place with Just for the Summer. So as I've said, this book is by Abby Jimenez and it's a contemporary adult romance, and coincidentally there is an endorsement by Emily Henry right on the cover, and the description for this book is Justin has a curse, and thanks to a Reddit thread it's now all over the internet. Every woman he dates goes on to find their soulmate the second they break up. When a woman slides into his DMs with the same problem, they come up with a plan. They'll date each other and break up. Their curses will cancel each other's out and they'll both go on to find the love of their lives. It's a bonkers idea and it just might work. Emma hadn't planned that her next assignment as a traveling nurse would be in Minnesota, but she and her best friend agree that dating Justin is too good of an opportunity to pass up, especially when they get to rent an adorable cottage on a private island on Lake Minnetonka. It's supposed to be a quick fling just for the summer, but when Emma's toxic mother shows up and Justin has to assume guardianship of his 3 siblings, they're suddenly navigating a lot more than they expected, including catching real feelings for each other. What if this time fate has actually brought the perfect pair together? You know, I did not think that my favorite subreddit r/am I the asshole would be a crucial part of one of the worst books I read this year, but here we are. I'm sorry to Abby, I really am, but this book was a draining experience. It was just soulless and boring. And it goes without saying on my channel that you are allowed to disagree on my opinions. If you disagree with me, that is okay, but I found the writing to be very simplistic and not interesting at all. And the romance didn't even sell me. Like, these 2 characters, Justin and Emma, have a online meet cute when they realize that they have a common experience on this subreddit. And within seconds of messaging each other, they're like obsessed with each other. And also after just a handful of conversations, Emma literally moves to Minnesota to be with Justin. She meets him for the first time when she moves there. Like, what? Hello? And they didn't even get together until the very end of the book, which makes it harder to be sold on the conflict they had in the very last act of the book. But also, like, goddamn, the characters and their trauma are really not explored well enough, and I understand that on a personal level it is harder to sell romances to me. However, even individually as characters, I really struggled to connect with either of them. There are cute moments though, and I think there was potential for this concept, but man, this was not for me, so this gets like a 2 out of 5 max. Secondly, we have The Women by Kristin, and this book is different from the other 2 books in the sense that it is an adult romance book, but it's a historical fiction. So the synopsis for this one is: women can be heroes. When 20-year-old nursing student Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she has always prided herself in doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing, and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Each day is a gamble of life and death, hope and betrayal. Friendships run deep and can be shattered in an instant. In war, she meets and becomes one of the lucky, the brave, the broken, and the lost. But war is just the beginning for Frankie and her veteran friends. The real battle lies in coming home to a changed and divided America, to angry protesters, and to a country that wants to forget Vietnam. The Women is the story of one woman gone to war, but it shines a light on all women who put themselves in harm's way and whose sacrifice and commitment to their country has too often been forgotten. A novel about deep friendships and bold patriotism, The Women is a richly drawn story with a memorable heroine whose idealism and courage under fire will come to define an era. I've literally never read a Kristin book before, so this one was my first one, and it sounded really interesting, and I did appreciate the fact that it was a historical fiction centered on the Vietnam War and not World War II, which is so commonly covered in historical fiction novels. I have read so many of those in my inconsequential existence on this earth, but I'm gonna be honest, I was slightly disappointed in this book. One of my biggest gripes with it is the fact that there's just trauma after trauma after trauma for the main character, Frankie. And before you type your paragraph, I understand that this is about war, and war is tragic, war is awful, it is traumatic, okay? I get it, I understand that. Evidently, I can read. But Kristin Hannah really did include everything but the kitchen sink for this character, because there's like, I have a list. There's like generational trauma, possibly narcissistic parents, death in the family, situationship, betrayal of the man you were in a situationship with, watching your situationship die, the love of your life dying, watching everyone die because it's war, being constantly separated from your support network, unexpected pregnancy and pressure into a marriage you don't want, miscarriage, car accident, PTSD, addiction, public harassment, to say the least. Like, holy shit. This is the reason why I haven't brought myself to reading A Little Life by Hania Yanagihara, because I have heard so many things about this book and how incredible it is, but I've also heard from so many people that it's trauma PRN. Sorry guys, I have to censor so I don't get this video demonetized, but this book really does toe the line with that, and I think some of that could have been reeled back in, because I think sometimes it distracted from exploring the characters and their relationships more. Also, this contributed to why I think the middle dragged a bit, because at some point I was like, okay, we gotta get moving, because the last 100 pages has just been traumatic event after traumatic event and nothing really about the characters or their relationships. The other thing I didn't love about this book was the romance. Really found out that the guy that she had a thing with was engaged, but was still like, but he loves me, and then he died, and then she fell in love with someone, and then he died, and then she started dating someone else that she didn't really like, and then agreed to marry him even though she didn't really want to, and she didn't love him, only to find out that the guy that she was in love with is actually alive, but he was cheating on her the whole time because he had a wife and kid. But then she slept with him anyway. And Kristin Hannah, why would you do that? Why would you do that? That was excruciating to read. That was a journey I was ill prepared for. However, that is not to say that there aren't good parts of this book, because there's actually really good parts of this book. My favorite part of this entire book is the sisterhood. The girlies girling together, because how did Frankie get through every traumatic thing that could possibly happen to a human? Her girlies. Who was there for her when she found out that her man had cheated on her? Her girlies. Who was there for her when she was the most depressed she had ever been, and her parents didn't let her talk about the war and also denied the fact that she was clearly struggling with PTSD? Her fucking girls. And I loved those relationships. I loved how they helped her seek the help that she needed to turn her life around and gave her advice and just was overall always there for her. And I thought that it tied really well with the themes of often overlooked commitment and dedication that women had during the Vietnam War. Kristin Hannah also clearly did so much research for this book, and this is evident in just the way that she's written the social and political climate in the United States during this time. But I do feel like I need to give her flowers for the way that she captures how horrific and terrifying the war was. And this is just as strong with her portrayal of PTSD. I don't have a diagnosis myself, so I can't speak to how accurate of a portrayal it is. However, it did make me really empathize with Frankie, and it did make me understand her whenever I didn't really agree with her actions or words. So as crazy as it is to say, I thought I would like this book so much more, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to give it like a 3.5 out of 5, which is still good, but I was expecting better. And finally, we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. This one is The Opposites Attract fake dating roommates romance book. The synopsis of this one is Daphne always loved the way her fiance Peter told her story, how they met on a blustery day, fell in love over an errant hat, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He was really good at telling it, right up until the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend Petra, which is how Daphne begins her new story, stranded in beautiful Waning Bay, Michigan, without friends or family, but with a dream job as a children's librarian that barely pays bills, and proposing to be roommates with the only person who could possibly understand her predicament, Petra's ex, Miles Nowak. Scruffy and chaotic with a penchant for taking solace in the sounds of heartbreak love ballads, Miles is exactly the opposite of practical buttoned-up Daphne, whose coworkers know so little about her that they have a running bet that she's either FBI or in witness protection. The roommates mainly avoid one another until one day, while drowning in their sorrows, they form a tenuous friendship and a plan. If said plan also involves posting deliberately misleading photos of their summer adventures together, well, who could blame them? But it's all just for show, of course, because there's no way Daphne would actually start her new chapter by falling in love with her ex-fiance's new fiance's ex. right? So this is Emily Henry's 5th adult fiction book. Her other ones are Beach Read, People We Met on Vacation, Book Lovers, and Happy Place. And I've heard so many things about Emily Henry's books over the years, and I know it's kind of on par with Sally Rooney's books. At least I've heard a lot of comparisons between the two, but I've never read an Emily Henry book, and I was very intrigued by the fake dating premise of this because I think fake dating is completely impractical in real life, because I think most people wouldn't put that much effort into something that isn't real. But maybe I'm just saying that because I wouldn't put that much effort into something that isn't real. But do I eat up the fake dating trope in fiction? Absolutely. So I truly went into this one with an open mind and no expectations, and I was pleasantly surprised. This book was kind of fun. It had a very interesting, kind of gimmicky premise, but it had heart. So as the description outlined, Daphne had moved to her ex-fiance's hometown for the last year, and she pretty much spent that year in a relationship bubble. Like, she only went to places that he liked to go to, only hung out with people that were in his life, only did the things that he liked to do. And so when he dumped her in the most heinous way possible, she sort of found herself left in this town that she didn't really know, because she was only going to the places that her ex wanted to go to, only spending time with his friends. So she really had no friends of her own and nowhere to go and nothing to do. And because the breakup was so abrupt and she was living in Peter's house, she very hastily decides to live with Miles, and then she actually ends up becoming friends with him. But of course you can't stay in a town for one specific person, so she did have plans to leave town and move back to her hometown after the end of the summer, after this event at her workplace. But Miles, in becoming friends with her, wants to show her around the town so that she can make new memories, so that she can hopefully fall in love with this town, but also convince her to stay. And at the same time, throughout the book, Daphne and Miles grapple with their relationship with their parents, and evidently how that has affected their romantic relationships and their views of life and relationships. And there were a lot of cliches, don't get me wrong, and I don't just mean romance-wise, but I also mean that Emily Henry does the very classic thing of making the protagonist obsessed with either books or writing. I did see some people have gripes with the humor of this book, and what I will say is that some of the jokes were charming, or they were corny but in a charming way, and sometimes the jokes didn't really land with me. Like, at best I would just nose exhale here and there at some of the jokes, but there's nothing worthy of note in terms of the comedy of this book, which is perfectly fine to me. I thought I would just comment on this because I saw a review of this book of someone being legitimately really angry that this book is called Funny Story but isn't comedy heavy, which is so funny to me, because literally if you read the first like 3 pages of the book, or even just the jacket of the book, you will realize or understand that the book is called Funny Story because that's how Peter, Daphne's ex, would always start the story to other people of how he and Daphne met. Like, it's not because Emily Henry was like, I invented comedy, Netflix comedy specials found dead in a ditch. In terms of the characters in the story itself, I would have liked to see Daphne more gradually develop her attraction to Miles. And I don't mean slow burn, although I do love a slow burn. I just mean like, it was page 20 when she first started to feel attracted to him. And speaking of Daphne, I don't really know how to feel about her as a protagonist, because I think this idea of her going on this arc of needing to decenter men or romance from her life and needing to heal after something catastrophic are such common experiences, and I really do appreciate the former especially being in this book. But also, Daphne as a person is so aware, yet so unaware. Like, months of introspection has created breakthroughs in understanding her childhood trauma and helping her get over Peter, and yet she is so unaware of other people and the way that her actions have hurt other people. So I felt conflicted in terms of how I felt about her, but also I think this is a symptom of the fact that this book is like 350 pages, so not long, but yet we dive into the parental trauma and childhood trauma of Daphne and Miles both, and that just isn't enough pages to flesh out something that complex, so it ended up being pretty simplistic. And that's pretty much it for critiques. Actually, some of the intimate scenes were written in an interesting way, and I want to preface this by saying that this book wasn't actually too steamy, and I think it actually appeals to a wider audience in the sense that, like, it has those scenes, but it also doesn't have a lot of those scenes if you don't like that for some reason. But some of it was interesting. Okay, so this is in a scene after Daphne and Miles have sex where he asks her, "Are you hungry?" And she says, "Since I met you, constantly." And what a line. What a line. And also during one of the intimate scenes, either Daphne or Miles took off their pants twice, and I was like, Am I missing something? That being said, though, I actually did have a lot of fun reading this book. The vibes are very cute and quaint, you know, librarian, protagonist slowly healing, lakeside town in Michigan vibes. I did enjoy the banter between Daphne and Miles, and as much as I've said negative things about Daphne, I actually really do appreciate the fact that she did not hesitate on not taking her ex back when he came back to her. And also, as much as people hate the fact that Emily Henry wrote her to have this quirk of making an audible sound that sounds like a moan to everyone but her whenever she eats something delicious, I can't exactly fault Emily Henry for that or criticize her for that, because I literally have a close friend in real life who does that. It really is peak literature to have something that I thought was an original experience only to have Emily Henry prove to me that I have in fact never had an original experience in my entire life. Also, I really did enjoy Daphne going on this journey of fostering more meaningful relationships and stepping outside of her comfort zone, and also learning how to be in a relationship without making it the center of her life. I think if you are interested in reading romance and the role that romance has in your life, and also how trauma affects that part of your life, you would like this book. Did I love it? No. Did I dislike it? Also no. I think it is the perfect airport or beach read, and I think if I were to rate it, I would give it no more than a 3.5 for sure, but also I wouldn't put it below 3. So I would probably give it like a 3.25 out of 5. And that concludes my review of the most popular books published in 2024. I had so much fun reading these books and making this video. I admittedly didn't even know if I was going to make this video because I think I was focused too much on the performance aspect of it all, but I wanted to make this video, so I'm really glad I did, and I hope that you enjoyed it as well. Please do let me know what you think in the comment section about any of these books if you've read any of them, because I would love to hear your opinions, whether you agree or disagree with me. And yeah, thank you so much for watching my videos this year. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your holiday season, and I'll see you in 2025.